Okay guys, this intro is going to be super short. I want to get right into this. I'm going to be watching OverSimplified's The Football War. I really know literally nothing about this conflict other than it took place in Latin America, and that's about it. Before I go in, I want to give credit where it is due. Please like, follow, support to OverSimplified, all his work. I'm just some nobody reacting to his work and trying to give my 2 cents wherever I can. And yeah, that's about it. Without any further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's watch OverSimplified's The Football War. The Football
Name
War.
these two countries. You're wrong, unless you got it right. Then good job. They are, of course, Honduras and El Salvador. One thing these two countries have in common is being fanatic about football. Or if you're a freedom-loving patriot, soccer. But do they love it so much?
That's, this, as a Hispanic man myself, my family, well, my mom's side of the family comes from Nicaragua, and my father's side of the family was, I believe my father was Salvadorian, and yeah, it's safe to say that with us Hispanic, Latino people from everywhere, you know, Mexico and all that, yeah, football, as we call it, but, you know, soccer, I think it was more popularized in America, is really big among us. Like, it is probably arguably the biggest sport. So, yeah.
So much they would go to war over it? You bet they would, and that is no bueno.
No bueno.
If you look at these two countries, you might notice one major difference, and that is that this one is a lot bigger than this one. However, this one had a larger population than this one, made up mostly of farmers, and there wasn't enough land for them to live and work on. So they started moving from El Salvador to Honduras in search of land, and by the 1960s, a huge number of illegal immigrants had crossed over the border from El Salvador. Meanwhile, in Honduras, it's 1963, and this guy has just staged a military coup to prevent the rise of communism, and is now the military leader of the country. He immediately began harassing the peasants' unions and other left-wing groups, but he's a little insecure about the legitimacy of his leadership. So he holds an election and wins, but then the opposing party says, hey man, that election was clearly corrupt and fraudulent, and also you've been bribed by the rich American banana companies who are taking all of our bananas tax-free, and now our economy is in ruins, and everyone started to get mad at him. Now if you ever find yourself the barely legitimate military leader of a corrupt Central American country, and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Blame something else. So he blamed the Salvadoran immigrants for stealing all the land and all the jobs and ruining Honduras. The immigrants found themselves under attack by the hostile locals. Egged on by the rich American banana companies who wanted all the bananas to themselves, the Honduran government began evicting Salvadoran immigrants who had been living on the land for generations and started sending them back to El Salvador. The Salvadoran elite were furious and protested, citing moral reasons, but in reality, they were just getting a little too crowded. So tensions were about as high as they could be, but then... It's the 1970 World Cup qualifiers, and both countries finished top of their qualifying tables, so it was now time for them to play against each other in a series of matches. The first match took place in Honduras. The night before the game, Hondurans gathered outside the Salvadoran team's hotel, making noise and taunting them. The next day, Honduras defeated the exhausted Salvadorans with a late 90th minute goal. After the match, a young Salvadoran fan, unable to bear her country's defeat, shot herself. Disturbingly, the Salvadoran government glorified the incident and made her into a national hero. And at the next game, fans brought pictures of her to the stadium. Emotions were running high.
Okay, so I want to talk about that. So, yeah, before I clicked on this video, there was a warning. This is the only oversimplified video with a warning about the whole self-harm situation. And I just want to say that as someone who struggled with suicidal thoughts for a year, my depression and suicidal thoughts lasted 1 year. Came out of nowhere, by the way. I've never been depressed or suicidal my entire life. All 2022 I was for some random reason. I put a video on my main channel about this, but it is an awful feeling. By the way, I'm fine now. I'm not depressed, not having suicidal thoughts. Perfectly fine now. Thank God. 2023, I'm back to normal. So that was like a weird little weird year of my life, but point is, it is an awful thing and to go through. but life is worth it. Living is such a gift. Like, I am a man of faith. I try not to bring it here on my second channel, because here I react to history. I don't talk about my faith, even though it's a huge part of me. But, you know, I think life is a gift given by God, and that, you know, it gets rough, but if you just choose to keep going, even when it feels hard, you'll find that the things will get better. The biggest lie those thoughts, those feelings tell you is that it will never get better, but that's a load of garbage, because it will. And you could look at me and know that it is possible to recover and just go back to normal. And, you know, it's just awful. And, you know, don't throw away your life for anything, especially sports. Boy, I don't like sports personally. I don't care much for sports. I don't know sports. The only teams I know is, like, I know the Dodgers, only because I'm in LA and everyone talks about the Dodgers, but I don't watch baseball. I don't care much for football. Actually, I kind of hate football because it was really big in high school. I hated high school, so by extension, I hate football because everyone's always like, "Oh, let's go watch the team every Friday. Let's go to the game." It's like, I don't care. Didn't like the football players. All of them were F-boys. Sorry, but, you know, don't care much for soccer. Even though I said it's a big thing in Latin culture, I just don't care for it. And I guess, where am I going with all this? What I'm saying is, I don't see losing your life over sports as something worth it. And I know to a lot of people, sports does matter. And that's fine if you like sports, but it shouldn't matter over your own life. And it's not worth losing your life over. You know, nothing should be worth losing your life over. And I would say sports is definitely one of those things. And, you know, just if you're struggling, keep living, keep going. You know, I struggled through my things. I didn't talk to anyone other than my mom. I told once. All 2022, I struggled through that. I was alone. Don't have any friends. The friends I did have are gone. And even to this day, I still don't have friends. But, so, you know, I struggled a lot, and I struggled alone for the most part. But I recovered, and things got better, and I really have come to love life. And life is a gift. Your life matters. You matter. And just keep living, and don't lose your life over anything. I'm not just dissing on sports, I just mean anything, like video games, YouTube, or whatever's big on your life. Not to say you can't have anything that's important or close to your heart, but don't let it be enough for you to rob your life. Don't let anything be enough to let you rob your life. Things will get better, and just know that you are not alone. So, yeah, sorry, that wasn't the most eloquent of my speaking. I rambled on, repeated myself. It is important to know that all life matters, and there's nothing more beautiful than life. It's a gift. Sorry, that triggered something in me, but let's get back to it.
As the next match took place in El Salvador, and this time the tables were turned. The Hondurans had to endure.
I keep
a sleepless
forgetting
night
that
in
I'm
their
half
hotel, and the next day,
Salvadorian, so
before
this
the
should
match
matter
started,
more
instead
to
of the
me.
Honduran flag, the Salvadorans
I never
raised
knew
the
my
golden
dad,
flag.
who was
A great job of
Salvadorian,
reducing
so, you know.
tensions. El
I guess
Salvador
that's
won
why I don't feel
decisively
such a
over
close
the exhausted
connection.
Hondurans. While spectators battled in the stands, Team Honduras fled home in a bulletproof bus with rocks being thrown at them, and the Honduran coach reportedly told his players that they were lucky they lost. In response to the defeat, Hondurans began terrorizing the Salvadoran settlers even more, in some cases reportedly throwing them off their land and burning down their homes, and the immigrants began fleeing back to El Salvador. The final game in Mexico would decide who went to the World Cup. It was close, but El Salvador came out victorious, knocking Honduras out of the tournament. The atmosphere was riotous. Literally. And back in Honduras, attacks on the Salvadoran immigrants further increased. This was too much for El Salvador to bear. With its people under attack and an unmanageable refugee crisis on its hands, El Salvador severed all diplomatic ties with Honduras and declared war.
Dang.
The football war is also known as the 100 Hours War, because that's how long it lasted, making it one of the shortest wars in history. El Salvador started by carrying out air raids on strategic locations within Honduras, including Toncontin International Airport, which prevented the Honduran Air Force from getting into the sky. Then, with their superior army, they began an invasion along two major roads, complete with light tanks and infantry. Their advance was rapid, and they were quickly approaching the Honduran capital. Then, the Organization of American States met in a bit of a panic and unanimously agreed that war between El Salvador and Honduras was a bad thing and probably shouldn't continue. So they went to El Salvador and said, "Can you please stop invading?" And El Salvador declared, "Not until they stop being jerks," and so the war went on. The Honduran Air Force finally got into the sky, and with aid from neighboring Nicaragua, they successfully carried out air raids from Salvador.
Where my mom's side's from. I guess it's the place I identify more with.
Salvadoran air bases and oil facilities, crippling the Salvadoran supply line and stopping their advance dead. Caught in a bit of a stalemate, the situation was no longer advantageous to El Salvador, so when the Organization of American States once again asked them to stop and agreed to ensure the safety of the Salvadoran immigrants, El Salvador relented, and a ceasefire was organized on the 18th of July. Then the OAS said, "Can you now please withdraw your troops from Honduras? No, please, no, please, no, please, no. Do it or we'll sanction you." You know what? Just for you, I'll do it. So El Salvador pulled its troops out of Honduras on the 2nd of August, and with casualties in the thousands, the war was over. The economies of both nations were damaged by the war, and El Salvador didn't have the capability to take care of all the returning immigrants, a crisis that eventually helped cause a civil war. The war left behind land and border disputes, some of which are still a cause of tension to this day. El Salvador went on to play in the World Cup, but lost every match they played and didn't make it past the group stage. So in the end, nobody achieved anything, and there were no winners. Except for this guy.
Yeah, the rich American. So yeah, that got heavier than I expected, and yeah, overall a pointless little war that didn't accomplish much, right? Obviously there's more to it than just football. It's an immigration issue and all that, but yeah, overall guys, I think I'm just gonna end the video right here. Remember, your life is important, you matter, and just keep living. Bye everyone.